butter my biscuits. Welcome to On the Road at the Speed of Mike. In today's episode, we're going to be exploring Georgia. Our first stop's going to be Toccoa Falls on the Toccoa University campus.
The word Toccoa comes from the Cherokee. The area Toccoa Falls University sits upon was part of the tribe's southern territory before being traded to the settlers of the newly independent USA. Entry to the campus and pathway to the falls is free of charge. It's literally on campus, maybe 100 paces or so from the parking lot to the fall's base and clearing. It's not the tallest. There are 4 other waterfalls on the eastern seaboard that beat it by height, but it's still tall enough, and part of its draw is just how easily accessible it is. I know I said it was waterfalled out less than 24 hours ago in this video, but this one just has a really nice shape to it. It's a very quintessential waterfall, really. It actually falls instead of just sliding down, which is what most of them do. Since I went on the tail end of winter, the water flow was pretty good and the mist made some pretty cool ice shapes on the surrounding plants.
My, that waterfall was beautiful. Up next, we're gonna head to Stone Mountain in Atlanta.
Actually, that's a lie. While we are heading that way, there's another random stop that caught my attention not far from the falls.
This is the school bus graveyard, right off 23 in Raoul, Georgia.
This is exactly what it sounds like. Rows and rows of school buses stacked together and painted with some groovy colors, the school bus graveyard. This is one of those roadside gems that makes you feel like you've walked onto the Georgia version of a Mad Max fortress or like a Walking Dead base. It's free to walk around it. I'm not sure about the interior of it, but I didn't really have time. It was just a quick stop.
It's like somebody put Spanish music into a blender.
Just on the outskirts of Atlanta is Stone Mountain. It's kind of like Ulur, Ayers Rock in Australia, but it's a little smaller, and instead of being made of sandstone, it's made of quartz. And it is just one massive big rock bulging out of a relatively level landscape. While it's geologically impressive in its own right, like so many other things in the South during this day and age, it's also mired in controversy. Because Stone Mountain, the #1 visited site in Georgia, is also a massive monument to the Confederacy. Scrawled as a relief on the mountain's face is Jefferson Davis, Robert E. Lee, and Stonewall Jackson. It was originally going to be on a much grander scale with dozens of sculptures and done by the same artist who designed Mount Rushmore. But decades of turmoil surrounded the project and it wasn't finished until the 1960s. So it's really not that old. Today there are calls to blast these reliefs off, and honestly I'd rather see something more natural in its place. Artistically, unlike the statues we saw in Richmond, I think these reliefs are pretty ugly. The association that runs this site has suggested adding a bell memorializing Martin Luther King in a speech where he referenced Stone Mountain, but that was deemed unacceptable with Confederate memorials in the same location, so for now it seems to be at an impasse, and it's probably just going to keep being controversial. And it's not just the wall art that's a memorial to the Confederacy. The whole park is kind of like a Confederate amusement park or event center, I guess you could say. Featuring historic southern buildings, a full plantation, mill, and a covered bridge, as well as camping, golf. On the other side of Stone Mountain, you can hike up a path that takes you to the top portion, or there's also a gondola that connects the main visitor center on the ground up to the top. You can get a decent view of the Atlantic skyline from here, although it's still pretty far away. The hike itself isn't too bad. It's not intensely steep at any points, and it doesn't go on for like a super long time, but you might break a sweat. Atlanta is a big city, and because of that, I was initially apprehensive about checking it out. I wasn't super versed on what to see here, but there are actually several decent things to check out. First and most well known is the Atlanta Aquarium, and right next to that is the World of Coca Cola Soft Drink Museum. I was never an avid soda drinker growing up, but I can really appreciate the history behind this place. Both these locations are right next to Centennial Olympic Park. This park was created in the heart of the city's downtown right before the 1996 Atlanta Olympic Games. Along with its statues and fountains, as an open space, it makes for like a really nice panorama of the surrounding sites. Prominent of these is the CNN building.
Begone, fake news, the power of Trump compels you.
In all seriousness though, all the mega mainstream news outlets are kind of garbage, and from a historic perspective, whether it was different back then or not, CNN was the beginning of it, and it shaped the way Americans consume news and media in a major way. The building itself is pretty cool looking inside though. I'll give you that, CNN. Walking around downtown for the rest of the night gave me a good sense of the city's vibe, and I could really see why people like it. But I'm not people, so off into the night we go.
Well, I hope you enjoyed Georgia. Up next, we're gonna head into Alabama for some cornbread and biscuits.